Okay, so we're live now. Welcome everyone to this conversation. Thank you for being with us from LinkedIn or YouTube. Both of those are very important for us. Um, the first thing I want to say is we do appreciate a lot of your time and your care about education. If you're in this conversation, it's because you care about the topic mostly, and I highly appreciate that. And this is the first conversation around WeU Academy, and we're building this together because we do believe that an academy with purpose that can bring education for the ones who needs it the most is worth talking about. So more than welcome to follow us for the moment in LinkedIn as WeU Academy. We'll talk a little bit about why this started as I introduce the amazing people here. I'll introduce myself lastly. So let's meet the speakers of today, and I'll start with Chris. So welcome, Chris, to the conversation, and please let us know a little bit about you.
Daniela, hi. Thank you so much for having me on this live stream and this conversation. My name is Chris. I'm one of the co-founders of WeU, also co-founders of a couple other Web3 startups and companies. I've been in the space since 2014. We all say different dates and stuff. It doesn't matter, but it has been my entire existence since then. So I'm banking hours as we go along. Very highly interested in all of the developments in the space, especially DAOs, and obviously NFTs with WeU is my biggest and deepest passion right now, and the different elements that we can apply NFTs to, but also just like how we can develop web like smart contracts in certain stacks to really bring it to consumer friendly platforms. So that's a little bit about me. I also play guitar and have a couple of kids that might jump into this room going crazy in their Halloween costumes. So beware.
Thank you so much for that. And definitely, yes. Just little disclaimer here. I'm not techie, non-financer, and the first time I actually launched an NFT was thanks to you. Easy platform, just one by one. There's no rush, and I loved it. Um, so thank you for having us, and thank you for beginning all this stream. I personally highly appreciate it. The next speaker is Kevin. Kevin, welcome to the conversation.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thank you for having me as well. I'm really looking forward to this discussion. Yeah, well, I'm a smart contract developer. I have my own little Web3 software agency called Wayfact. And yeah, I'm all about education. So I'm really looking forward to the outcome of all of this. And yeah, thank you for having me again.
Thank you. Thank you. I highly appreciate your profile as well and for you to be here. I've been following your journey for a while, and I know you do care about positive impact. Last but not least, to Jamie, how are you? Talk to us a little bit about you.
Thank you very much. I am good. All the better for seeing you guys, obviously. So I would say where my kind of journey started is I set my first business the week before we went into the global pandemic. And I was like, oh my God, I'm doing a trainer and facilitator. And how on earth am I going to connect with people during the pandemic? So I started using VR and the Metaverse as a methodology to start connecting with people and delivering training in a different way, because we could do so much customization. So I set up a business called MetaHub, which focuses on metaverse realities, metaverse conferences and events. And then I also do something called Distributed Republic, which is around getting Web3, decentralization and metaverse knowledge to audiences that might struggle to participate in centralized institutions to be able to benefit from decentralized technology. So very much in line with what we use up to, and hence being here today.
Thank you for that. And that's also why I love having you here, because I know what a strong social entrepreneur you are and how much you care. And a little about me. So I'm Daniela C. Merlano. I've been recent understanding about Web3 since about 6 months ago. I'm a voice for a mindful Web3, which means a Web3 that cares about others and ourselves. And I'm happily now building this WeU Academy with purpose. So let's start this amazing conversation around education, which is why we're here. And I wanted to start talking about in your knowledge, in your dream side. And there's this beautiful exercise that Jamie recently did with me, and just kind of close your eyes and imagine the most empathic, brightest educational world you can find. And within that feeling, I'd like you guys to talk to us a little bit about what would be the most important educational paradigm that you feel that we should be looking for in a better future for it to change.
I can jump in and start. An inclusive future. We're on the internet, but it's amazing how many people don't actually have access to internet, and how many people don't have access to facilities to get into the internet. So obviously with WiiU having an inclusive future there with education, but also just with Web3 tooling. I've been in the game for a long time. I partnered with Ivan on Tech several years ago with the United Nations and built AI and blockchain centers in the country of Georgia. I think it's really important that if we're making wins in the industry, that we pay it forward in some way where we believe in, So for me, it was just mind-blowing that Web3 could have such an impact, or a potential theoretical impact. It's not really theoretical, but it was for me at the time. I was like, wait a minute, people from all over the world can actually just attach their wallets to a website and start working for little tasks that we produce. And we proved it to be right. And the future for me is like no borders, no boundaries when it comes to the opportunities of the internet. And I think Web3 brings that more powerfully than any other part of the internet. So it's really fun to be part of what you're bringing forward, Daniela, for WiiU, because it's been a long road for us to get here, and really, really excited to bring our learnings and our technology to a global audience and open that up.
Couldn't agree more, especially with the borderless. Me coming from Colombia, that's a huge thing. I saw Kevin wanting to go next. What's your thoughts on this?
Sure. Yeah, in general, I think the most important aspect in general for education might be getting more individualized to the actual student, because we see all these courses everywhere, and most of the time, it's scalable, right? You can't teach everyone one by one. That's naive. But I definitely think that we should explore some course formats where we have maybe some more individualized course paths, for example. Having some kind of quizzes. If you can't achieve that, or if you don't know that, then you get to that chapter, or you get to that, and things like that, where you have some kind of where the content that you're learning or consuming is actually based on your knowledge, on your interests. And I think in a data-driven world, and with the gamification that Web3 and ownership thoughts that Web3 can bring in, and then maybe even Metaverse, to make it even more fun, like just virtual worlds, then this could be, from my point of view, super interesting and powerful.
Yeah. Double click and highlight on the power of us building our own educational journey with our genuine interests. I think that's so powerful. Jamie, what would you like to add on here?
Yeah, I suppose the biggest thing that I think when we're looking at this educational paradigm is our education system, in the way that it exists at the moment, has only been invented. It was only created to produce people for an industrialized workforce. It's an industrialized education for an industrialized workforce. And we're moving into a digital economy now. And we have to think about what the educational structures need to do in order to support people to participate within a digital economy. And that's going to be a very different structure than what a industrial workforce looked at. And if we start to look at the reskilling that needs to happen, yes, we can talk about it from a young people's perspective and the education bit and changing our education system. But actually, there's a huge amount of the workforce that's going to need to reskill to be able to participate in this future economy. And that's going to involve redefining the structures that we have in place, redefining what it means to be able to live within that digital society. And I like schemes like learn to earn and stuff like that, where you can start to, by learning and going through courses, we can tokenize it and you can benefit from the produce of that. So there's lots of different ways that we can transform our education system to be more applicable to the economy and to help support people to take their place in that digital economy.
I completely agree with that. And I think something that I'd love to add on it, and how I imagine a little bit also the future of education, is practical education. I think with what you guys have said, in a borderless way, when we can receive in a decentralized system, is still verifiable. The information that we need to start building the career from what we really feel passionate and purposeful about, and I'll always bring that into the conversation. It's very important that we actually get a system that we can practice it on. One of the things that I feel affects the most educational wise is when you go through a year or 5 year program, and then you get to practice a little bit on it by the last minutes, the last year of education in your internship. Or even you have to find yourself the opportunities to start practicing before that, so you actually get to see how does that look in action, and how can you add value to it, and what can it work and not work from it, and build from there. So I feel that practical education and having the possibility of practicing as much as we can right away what we're receiving, not will only give us a better feedback on what we like, not don't like, and which roads we can go, but also it would make us remember more, which I think it's very important. We lose a lot of knowledge of what we've learned in our, or at least how I've been raised and educated, because I do not practice it or place it into action. So I think that's something that I feel is highly important, and not just because of what we learn, but as I said before, because a better world will be built when we all feel aligned with what we are doing in our careers, and that is defined by the education we get. So I feel that that is highly, highly important, and I can't stress on it enough. And before I pop the next question, I just want to say, for the people that are listening, in comments, more than happy, more than welcome to hear your thoughts, your agreements, your questions. I know writing it down is different than talking about it, but if you feel comfortable with, I'm more than happy to pop them up here and have a little discussion around those ideas. So the next question is, it's a little directed because of how we are talking today, but this I'd love for Kevin to start on, which is, what is the strongest contribution that smart contracts can bring to improve education?
Yeah, thank you. That's, I think, a twofolded question, right? Because on one side we have the blockchain itself, which is the infrastructure that the smart contracts are actually running on. And that part is usually, responsible for being trustless, for being decentralized, for all that amazing stuff that we are talking about all the time. And then we have this mysterious code that you can save on there, and that is then executed automatically in a transparent way, usually. And everyone that participates in that smart contract actually knows all the rules. If you, for example, participate in a learn to earn protocol, something like that, then you usually know, depending on how decentralized it is, like on how many of these things actually happen on chain, you know what you need to do, right? And there are usually no ways that you can fake yourself into certain certificates or something like that. Everyone knows if you actually achieve that. Everyone knows that it's fair, or if it's unfair, then everyone knows that as well. And that's actually the true power of it, I would say.
Wow, that is so interesting. I personally didn't know that it had that both sided up verifying if you did or didn't properly make it, if that makes sense, through the certification.
Well, the smart contract is always public. It's just how readable it is for others. Let's put it that way.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, because maybe there's some couple of listeners like me that we might not know that much. So it's very nice to understand why is it that is that transparent, and it's because of what you just explained. So thank you so much for that. What other of the experience you've had, Chris and Jamie, what other add-ons would you think of the smart contract contribution to this?
It's really interesting to see how smart contracts are being stacked upon each other. So let's say within DAOs, when you have proposal systems and all of these voting mechanisms and all of these payouts, you can actually stack them on top. Smart contracts aren't really that smart, right? They're pretty easily programmed. You can get complicated with them, but they have their boundaries. So you can put them on top of each other to create a pretty interesting system. And so there's that. Just the actual cryptocurrency to make that payment on whichever blockchain you're using is a smart contract. That's the most powerful thing in my eyes ever. Just being able to transfer a token across the internet to somebody else that has value is the most powerful thing ever. Now, we talk about it being transparent. There's also blockchains that aren't so transparent that I'm very hopeful in the future come to the forefront, because when we worked with a bunch of refugees within the Middle East, there was many Iranians that we just couldn't get this to. We couldn't pay them in cryptocurrencies because there was no off-ramps to get it into their currencies. And yeah, it was just very difficult, So having more payment options, off-ramps, on-ramps, payment solutions where these people can buy these things, and then in countries where they're just not supposed to be accepting or working for cryptocurrencies, which is absolutely ridiculous that we live in a world like that. But for those people using like a blockchain like Monero or Zcash, a privacy token, so you can't really track and trace, I think is powerful as well. But smart contracts, I think in the next, from 2017 when ICOs and projects went crazy till now, it's been so encouraging and amazing. It felt like it all collapsed and nobody was really going to build something of value. But coming out of that into this last era of new people and participants, it's really wild and amazing to see how far we've come. And I think in the next 3 to 5 years, smart contracts will live everywhere on the internet, absolutely everywhere you go. And hopefully most of us don't even know that we're really interacting with them when we're exchanging on all of these platforms. So yeah, it's exciting. Smart contracts are incredibly, incredibly powerful. So yeah, we'll see, but it's going to be fun.
I can add to that. Hello, can you hear me? I can add to that if you want. So I would say for me, one of the smart contract aspects that I find really interesting for moving into the future, and particularly from a digital identity perspective, is SBTs, which is soul-based tokens. And they're kind of a sister contract to our NFTs, with non-fungible tokens. So what we're looking at is being able to, with NFTs at the moment, they're all transferable. It's being able to go, right, I've got this item and I can send that across to somebody else in that wallet. Whereas soul-based tokens are intrinsically linked to the individual that they're about. So when we're talking about things like diplomas, qualifications, things like that, we won't be that far off than being able to be linked to us digitally as part of a digital identity. And you can think about how that's going to impact the workforce when, you could have that on an NFC that you bring with you with your ID chip, or it might be that you give that when you go along to your interview to authenticate the qualifications that you have. So there's a lot of information that we're able to store in these kind of very simple we call them smart contracts, but actually they're dumb programs. They're very basic programs that can do things based on what we have set them the confines to be able to do. And that really does change the way that we might interact with our education system and the way that we also value education as well, because at the moment there's been a devaluing of educational qualifications because they're harder to authenticate or people don't generally do it. But actually it could bring up the value of education a hell of a lot if we could have an SBT that was related to our educational qualifications and things like that.
Maybe if I'm allowed to, a small take on that. These things are basically the true power, because having a non-transferable NFT is something that's here for a long time already. the amazing, or actually the somewhat innovation now is, or with SBTs, that you have some kind of social recovery aspect. So if you lose the access to your wallet, you are able to get it back, for example, by means of people that know you personally, can testify, hey, that's the person that used to own that wallet or that token. And these things are basically already being built on, for example, with account abstractions to drop a password in here. But in general, that's definitely going to be, from my point of view, also one of the big new things in the next couple of years.
Oh, I think that what you said there was so important, like, because sometimes when I heard a lot of like talks about education and Web3 because I'm really committed to learn. And one of the things I heard was the power of being possible, that we could build, thanks to the smart contracts. I understood the blocks of our own education and summing up like those qualifications in our wallet. And I thought of that, like, it's such a huge responsibility as we're the owners now of everything that we do. If we lose it, it's like, oh, like a big O. So it's very good news what you just said, because I think for some people, when it feels unknown and risky, and then if you lose it, it's like you lost it, it might feel less welcoming. So that's huge news to actually move more around education and Web3. Like, thank you so much for that.
It's actually the responsibility of Web3, at least at this time, right? That's the whole thing. You own it. You have it, you own it, and it's painful when you disregard that and you lose it. And all of us, except for Daniela probably here, all of us have made mistakes there. Probably 90% of the view, we've lost crypto. I've lost some Bitcoin. I've lost some ETH from way back in the day. Never thought it was going as high as it went. So I would love to try to figure out how to get that back. But I'm continuously learning how to store, how to be safe, and how to do these things. Now, I do think that NFTs and even cryptocurrencies are going to come to the forefront of all platforms, all brands, all businesses. And so there will be a tracking system to see if you have a diploma there, right? That you'll be able to get that back by just verifying that this is lost, you know, and we can tag that on the blockchain that one's like dismissed, and we can bring you back one. So I agree, these systems are going to be interesting to follow, and I will use them. So if you're building them, then hook me up, because we need stuff like that for Wii U. Being inclusive to the global audience and teaching brand new people, especially in developing nations and people that have never ever touched this technology before, those types of things for security and just comfort of mind are really important.
Yeah, I think in a little more basic way as well, for the ones like me that we're not big investors, that's fine. One of the barriers I broke on myself is learning from Web3. Being part of a new educational system does not mean I have to invest a lot or lose money, but there was always the thing of, if I forget the seed phrase, if I forget something about my wallet, I'll lose it. So I think in that very, like, in that first level of understanding, it's huge news that we're still safe, and that's amazing. And the next question is a little, also because I'm heavily interested in the experience of this for Jamie, and is, what is the strongest contribution that the metaverse can bring to improve education? So I feel that smart contracts is a little bit more developed by now. As I understand, they've been around longer, and so they can bring more present value too of what we're understanding so far. I feel metaverse is a little more future thinking too, but in the present still adding value. So what are in your experience, what are your thoughts around that?
Sure. So I think it's really important to recognize that the way that the metaverse works, well, I'm going to talk not just from a metaverse perspective, but from a virtual reality perspective, and they're not necessarily mutually connected together. They don't have to be. But when we're looking at something like VR technology, it has a 37% higher emotional reaction than 2D content. It has a 27%, it's engaged with for 27% longer than 2D content, because the whole way that virtual reality works is it tricks your nervous system into creating an immersive experience. So your body believes what it's seeing and what's happening, and that's why it has such an impact. Now, from an educational perspective, and anyone who's an educator will know, being able to create emotional reactions and get people to engage with it for longer is the key building blocks that you want to be able to achieve to get somebody to be able to learn something. So we can really design experiences in very new and innovative way. And from a metaverse perspective, which is almost the 3D envisioning of the internet, it really provides an opportunity to provide people with what the internet was supposed to be, where your creators made money from their content, where you owned what you created, your digital labor was your reward. And that ties in a lot to Web3 principles as well. If anyone's looking for, you've got a centralized version of the metaverse, you've got a decentralized concept in the metaverse as well. But that decentralized concept to the metaverse means that your contributions are valued. Even if that's just looking on a website and going through videos, you can still tokenize that. You can still make that so that's an educational benefit to someone. And the metaverse is really that immersion in our digital spaces, that erosion between our material and our virtual worlds.
I just have a little add-on on this conversation for Jamie is, would you be so kind, for the ones that have not been involved in metaverse conversations before, to define briefly as you can, I know it's still an ongoing thing, what the metaverse is?
Yeah. So the metaverse is the interconnected, interoperable 3D envisioning of the internet. So essentially, it is trying to make our virtual experience of our digital world much more immersive and connected. So if, let's say, for example, I was going to a shop in the metaverse, that shopping experience should be very intuitive, and I should be able to interact with it in a similar way that I would do within a physical environment. And there's lots of different versions of the metaverse, but I'm a big believer in, that it needs to be not have predetermined physics. It needs to be able to be decentralized, that it reflects identity and it reflects that Web3 principles. So essentially, it's that 3D immersion of our digital worlds.
Thank you. Thank you so much for explaining us to us both. So Chris, I know also that you're highly interested in metaverse and metaverse dynamics. What is your idea of this?
Yeah, my idea, it's going to be interesting to see how it develops and comes to market. The conversations when I host a lot of these summits and conferences, the subject is always like, what is it, right? And I think it's plain. Like if you're in here and you're on it, like it's plain as day, right? Just like Jamie's talking about a 3D version of the internet that we already know. If you think about these communities that we have that live on Discord and Twitter, and Telegram. Now think about all of them having their own little entities running around and talking and communicating and being part of a group, but more in a 3D element, right? I think that that's the metaverse. And if you think about that, just like on that level, Discord, like your community, oh, my camera has gone off. Battery life on Sony's are the worst, but at least you can still hear me. I know that because this has happened before. I think that it's really, it's really interesting, and the opportunities are so vast. Like I can't even start to think about, like, it would take me a month to come up with all of the ideas, they would just continue to flow. So the metaverse is going to be incredibly interesting, incredibly cool to see develop. And to discuss what we talked about with like education, even the 3D world for me was a crappy place to learn because the way that it came into my world and my life. But I can't imagine. So if you think about this, you think about kids playing games, right? Whether on VR or just on their things. And now you think about the excitement of the gamification of those games and what really brings those kids to those games. Then you bring that into the classroom and education. And instead of having Mrs. McLeod, an 80-year-old woman that really hated children and didn't really want to be in the classroom, it can be maybe a Bored Ape or some kind of funny guy from Fortnite that's actually teaching the class with a voice actor. And just, I could see how kids of all sorts, because we all learn in different ways, right? And in the metaverse, like once that comes to market in such a big way, there's just multiple ways. Like I know my two kids are completely different than each other, totally would learn in a different way with this, and I would pick something different for both of them. And so I do that in the real world now. One's in a forest school that's basically climbing trees all day, and one's in a structured English school, learning, sitting at a desk and structured. So the metaverse is going to bring so many options to education. I can't even think about it. That's crazy.
Yeah, you touched a couple of key points here, I feel, and one is how different we all learn. Welcome back. Nice to see you.
I couldn't do it while I was talking. Like I tried, and then my brain stopped. So, yeah.
And I'm happy you finished talking first. I think that's great, so you didn't lose the idea. But what I was thinking is how powerful it can be, especially for that difference of learning, when if in the huge class everyone went one road, and then like I was the hard child to learn maths in the class, so I always had to get extra or go to a different classroom to so the teacher could explain to me like again and again. So what I feel is, because education is experience and we don't want to feel disconnected, we don't want to feel fallen apart, if we're included in those environments within the metaverse with people from other places in the world, because, well, hoping for this to be decentralized, I would be having extra maths with someone else that is also learning through that. It might feel way more empowering, way more like open to we're all together in learning, like a more welcoming experience, I feel, to not block especially children with any tags on if they feel or learn in a different way or in a different rhythm. And second, the experience. So as Jamie was saying, and it was what we were saying, introducing this conversation around practical experience, one of the most smart projects I've seen actually builds environments in the metaverse to bring children. So part of their classes, not all of it, because it's good to have like some like the in real social life interactions for children, but some of those knowledge are placed into the metaverse, so they have an educational background with an experience. And I think that's like that was very, very powerful. So they learn faster, but they can also go and socialize and have those skills, social skills that are great and like that are essential for growing up. So I felt it was a great way to merge them. As Jamie uses the term digital, I think it's a great way to merge a physical world with a digital version. What would you like to add on this, Kevin? you can talk again. Thanks. Yeah.
Sorry.
That I saw Jamie little finger. Were you asking for the
word? When you're ready, Kevin, I'm happy to say
feel
something.
Free to admit. Feel free.
I felt so classroom wise, like.
The only thing I was going to say from a classroom perspective and just kind of building on what you were saying is a lot of what my ambition is with building metaverse environments is to design those environments around the way that people learn as well. So particularly if we're looking at it from a neurodivergency perspective, I might design an environment that's for someone who is autistic. So I might mute some of the colors. I might make it so it's less overwhelming, less stimulating, and that makes that a better educational environment for that person. Now I could have someone who's autistic or has ADHD or on the dyslexic side of the spectrum. And in that one, I might make the colors more bright. I might make it more engaging. I might make sure there's loads of moving parts in order to keep attention. And the difference is that those two students could be in the exact same classroom, but perceive the environment completely differently. And that can all be based on preference, not just ability. So somebody can choose the settings that they want that works for them based on what that environment is. I think that that's a really powerful part of what the metaverse can bring. And yeah, just kind of on the idea of that definition of the metaverse as well, there's the one that I particularly like is a virtual version of our material world with no predetermined physics. It's community owned, community governed, freely interoperable, and with privacy built in, aka an open metaverse. Sorry, Kevin, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No worries, buddy. Not sure if I'm getting friends now with that, but I'm really captured by the vision of the metaverse as well. I'm really super excited. But when we think about it from I try to usually view it from a more objective perspective because I'm biased as well to some extent, right? I'm in Web3. I want it to succeed and everything. But when we look at it, what's new right now? Well, the graphics get a little better. We have metaverse virtual worlds like quite some time now. And AR, VR is also currently on the rise, but it's also not fully there yet. It's getting way better every year, but we haven't talked about the big metaverse 2 years ago. So I just want to highlight that it might take a lot of years that the, let's say, passion for this topic might flatten, I think, or I'm actually convinced of that, except there's really an amazing solution already coming soon. But looking at that as well, I doubt it a little bit because when we look at websites, for example, I think we all agree that the metaverse, how it looks like today, if we define any of the existing worlds as a metaverse, then it feels like Web 1.0, right? 1.0. And what has changed from web throughout the evolution of the internet is basically the experience that UX designers and so on got throughout the journey. And there are a lot of experiences and things that you can apply from Web 2, from regular websites to the metaverse, but many, 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 many touch points in the 3D world when it comes to interaction with the user are, if at all, based on games, probably, right? Because there you have virtual worlds as well, and there you can derive certain UX elements from it. But what do I want to say with this? I just think that it might take way longer than many people think and anticipate until we have something that's actually usable, actually provides value, actually looks cool, actually is fun, and actually helps you learn something new. So I'm all into it, right? But I think it might take longer than most people think right now.
What would be your timeline, just for my general understanding, to take it to where you said that it will be usable and cool, yeah.
Well, it depends on the use case, right? And I'm not let's say a visionary in that case, but well, when it comes to actually having some kind of immersive university where it's individualized, personalized to even things when it comes to autism and things like that, I would say at least 10 years when it really goes that deep, right? That's super deep, super narrow. And most people, I think, don't even understand how much work and how much money you need and how much research you actually need to flow into such a solution. And then you have usually multiple solutions that all have some advantages over others, and these improve themselves through experimentations against each other. So I think these things take time, and well, could be next year. You know, I'm just one person in the big world as well, but let's say I think it's more probable that it takes way longer than a shorter period of time. What's your take? Let's put it that way.
I love these things. At the end of every conference, I always say, like, what do you think Bitcoin's going to be priced at the end of the year? Just to like rustle feathers, just to be that guy. And like most people are just like, bugger off that question, but some people love it. And the same thing with the metaverse. Like, how do you know? And like, what are we talking about? Right. So, yeah, I will say this, that October 2020, I played the Halloween special. So I'm not even kidding. That's, what is it, 2 years ago now? 2 years ago, I was playing in Decentraland, the Halloween special, and my mind was blown. Okay, there was free NFTs everywhere as I was participating 6 days before Halloween, and then they completed it on Halloween. And it was mind-blowing for me. Like, it was really mind-blowing. I was collecting NFTs all over the place. Of course, the gas fees were like $15-20 at that point. So I literally went broke in that 1 week period collecting all those NFTs. But I had a heck of a lot of fun, and it made me realize that potentially, if the right thing comes out and is directed at the right audience, then we can get like a big, huge, like, catapult to the forefront. So yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna go. I'll go 5 years until it's like really, really adopted in ways. And I think the way forward is definitely games. And if you're going to produce anything, then make it a game as well, right? If it's education, make it gamey, make it fun, make it something that even people that won't be buying that product will come in and go, holy smokes, like, that's not for me, but it was wickedly cool. And I know a lot of people that this is for. So yeah, let's go with 5 years. And that's my answer to most timeline questions, right? So 5 years.
I'm curious about Jamie there. Yeah.
There's a little bit that I would go, the whole thing with of why the metaverse is relevant now is because there is not just the metaverse, it's this convergence of technology, and all of these technologies that are happening at the moment are built on top of each other. You know, whether it's the case of 5G, whether it's the case of Web3, whether it's the case of the metaverse, they all combine together to create this interoperable network of things. And I think we forget how far the internet has come within a very short space of time, even from Web 2 to, you know, where we're starting at the beginning of Web 3, and how much using things like AI to be able to build up that workforce in a more enhanced way is going to have a huge impact on the development. So, and also the big driver for changes, we've just come out of the pandemic. If you think about how much video conferencing software and our socialization of these technologies evolved in such a short space of time. Yes, it literally took the fear of death, but we went through a digital transformation that would have taken us 10 years in the space of 2 years. And I think coming out of that, there will be quicker. I probably think before you've got something that's much more practical and usable within organizations, you know, 3 to 4 years to get something that's functional. But if you're talking about the end evolution of it, I mean, that won't happen for, you know, 10 years or so. So I can understand that perspective as well.
I think what I would say about it, and I love where the why and the where this conversation is coming from, is like my personal way is hope. And what I feel is that this is the best contribution that the metaverse can bring to improve education, and it's actually giving a second thought to the current educators on what to look for, not thinking of the metaverse, but thinking of the mindset. And one of the brightest things I've seen is every time I've popped into listening to conversations about metaverse and education, where current people that are educators not involved in tech jump in, they used to raise their hands like, yeah, but we could do this now and without the metaverse. And what I think as a listener is like, yeah. And I feel that's the best present time contribution that the metaverse can bring to improve education, and it's actually double clicking on the current system, the current people working on it, the current people going to in-person schools, the current people giving virtual experiences through education, to give a thought on tailor-made, on openness for different types and rhythm of learning, the experience, like bringing a true value on the importance of the experience and the importance of fun and practice for children and adults and people at any stage to actually be more curious and actually love and embrace education, as important as it is. So for present times, just that the metaverse is bringing this conversation in stronger ways, because technology and people are looking to build in 5, 3, or 10 years something different, is huge. So that would be my first message. And so yeah, I just wanted to feel that sometimes we forget how big the impact can be today, so we can bring a better future. And if we focus on that today too, and bring those conversations, I think we'll also be doing more research, as Kevin was saying, we'll also be asking our questions. If I'm building a metaverse and I'm asking the questions now on what research do I need, so that can be placed in service for better education, definitely I would have a better, more long-term business model than in any other way. And it's my belief, but I just wanted to add that on the conversation. And speaking of those many, many years, and because I believe in the power of dreaming to create passion, and that passion to create courage and purpose to make it true, it might be or might be not that true, but if you could imagine a decentralized educational world using Web3, how would that world look like? And I know this might take 30 seconds or so for you guys to actually envision it. And I love the creativity of this question, because it's not meant to promise or be true. It's just meant to dream and open awareness and open possibilities for purposeful people out there wanting to build it.
I think that it goes back to the first question, and it's also relevant to all of the questions that we've been tackling here. All amazing questions, but I think it's really simple. Web3, and it's cliche in the industry, I feel, to say bank the unbanked, this whole thing, but this is what it was really about. Like, really, you're talking about like hopeful dreaming. It was like, what if, I remember Satoshi Nakamoto, he had in a thing, he said, what if Bitcoin gets to 10,000? Like, what if it gets to 10,000 per thing? It means the adoption scale and everything is going according to plan and all of this stuff. And then he says, what if it does go to 1 million? And it's like, he dared to dream. He, she, they dared to dream very, very big and philosophize this future of Web3. And thanks, Satoshi, if you're out there listening to us right now. Thanks, pal. Yeah, I think that it's abundant, it's massive, and it's inclusive. Like, that's what it's about. It's really about all human citizens being able to take part, like Jamie was saying, everything's stacking together right now in the internet and all of the different parts of technology that make it better, bigger, faster, stronger. And Web3 is going to plug directly into this, creating literally a borderless opportunity for people to participate, and not just participate in extracting value, getting value, working for cryptocurrencies, but also for creators to build on top of this and monetize on it faster and better than going through some crazy weird tax system and some weird wacky government that's trying to take as much value, just stealing from their people. It's going to create lots of opportunity for people to do things the way they want it to be done. And I think the trendsetters in this space are idealistic and are doing it for the right reason. Okay, well, it's a clear divide on both sides, right? There's lots of scummy, horrible guys, but those guys go away. Like, they're going away right now as the markets are kind of lower, and it's not such a hype point right now. But the people that are actual builders in the space, they're doing it for the right reasons. I don't know anybody in this space that's not paying it forward in some kind of a way. We had somebody invest in an idea that we were doing, and one of our community members was a Serbian refugee, and he was Serbian, and he came from a very challenging past in that region. And this guy gave that refugee like 10 grand or something there on the spot. And it's like, the people in this space that have made it, that are building it, especially if they've had the opportunity to get some gains in this thing, they're always paying it forward. And so it's a lovely place to be involved in. So yeah, the Web3 future is abundant. It's a thing that will create opportunities for everybody that wants to take it.
Who wants to go next? You can raise your hand.
I'll let Kevin go. I stole this last turn, so I definitely feel it's his turn to go first.
Okay, sure. Yeah, well, I think I'm a little bit hung up, not sure if that's the right word, on the term decentralized right now, because I don't think you truly want it to be decentralized, fully decentralized, which would degrade the UX for the user, which means making it harder to learn something significantly. But I think what we actually want is to have the certificates, the accomplishments, and things like that, which give you some kind of legitimacy when it comes to applying for some job or something like that, that this is decentralized, right? Which just means it's a token on the blockchain. But I think the most important aspect might be that it's interoperability, that it's interoperable, that you are actually able to interact with other platforms in a seamless manner, so that they don't need to implement some custom logic to actually read your certificate, but it's actually out of the box, right? If they know the smart contract address of your NFT, then they know, okay, that user has one of these certificates. It's legitimate, right? And I think that's one of the most powerful things, and which we might be heading towards too. And everything else, like the website and so on, I think it will be, or I'm quite convinced of that, it will be highly centralized, because centralization has, let's say, unfortunately in crypto, many advantages as well. So it always is some kind of a trade-off, what you want, what you do. Decentralized is just the shiny thing that everyone wants, but not actually fully wants.
I think that's right. And it's right for future conversations, like wait for it, but like definitely something I would have a longer talk in. And what would you decentralize from education? What would you keep centralized and why? Not for today, but just keep it there, maybe coming soon. But huge, like double click that. Very interesting.
Yeah, I think the decentralized educational world is interesting because the educational world will be driven by what decentralization means. And I think the best way I can highlight that is we don't really know what the impact of this technology is going to be on the way that we see our political, economic, and social systems at the moment. A great example is we didn't expect Web2 to erode the ability of our democracies to function. You know, even in the most recent campaign in Brazil for the last election, there's results that just came out today that they said that YouTube approved 100% of the misinformation campaigns that were out there, and Facebook approved 50%. Now, when we were coming up with the concept of two-way content creation and social media, that wasn't what we thought was going to happen when this technology was incepted. And I suppose with Web3, it's about what can we learn from what we've already done from introducing Web2 and how that's impacted web education, and how can we change the way that we interact with technology? Because the problem we have at the moment is the technology is regulating the institutions that were designed to regulate it, and they're driving the change in the wrong way. So we have to think about how we address that, and that will give us a better idea of how our decentralized educational world will work, because it will shape our decentralized educational world.
I agree. I feel that for like now that I had a double click in my head thanks to Kevin, I think I'll think of this from what I was thinking in a borderless way. I think that one of the huge, like the biggest impacts I've seen because of like my own story and what can I see from here is when you open the work world and the educational world in a borderless way without effect, like we can all learn indistinct of where we were born in a piece of land, if that makes sense, in a very like plain structure. But very few people gives themselves to do so because it's inaccessible, because of the mindset of I have to actually be there or go there to listen about this, because of language barriers. And every time I think of how I imagine a world with borderless education, that you can build your own story, as we were saying before in the first question, and that's also why I brought this as last. I feel that it's actually a pretty bright roadmap to a more empathic world, because we would find people working more on what they really feel passionate about, worrying less about the title of where did I get this education from, but about the verification and the use case of it. More problem solving and creativity, because passion drives courage and courage drives creativity. More resilience, because they really want to work in it, get into it, and they freely chose it. And that's one of the biggest things of harmonic passion. And the frustration of not getting the information to do so, or not being able to pay for everything that means to actually go for the information, it's huge. It makes us all want to dream bigger and solve more and build a better world. It's what I feel. So that's why I wanted to close up with this conversation, to place a little bit of what we were talking into how can it make it better. But yeah, I think my intention was placed thinking of borderless, and I think I'd love to, like, yeah, you made me think heavily, Kevin. Thank you so much for that. I love when that happens in these conversations. Like, I learned so much. So I just want to say this, that thanks everyone for being here. Let's keep building a purposeful educational world. It's definitely worthy, and more than happy to see or hear any closing words from our speakers today.
Yeah, thanks so much for this. It was absolutely great. And I think, yeah, decentralized systems, you don't start with a decentralized system unless you're Bitcoin. And even ETH is going through incredible growing pains, and you should leave like the hardcore decentralization to those boys. I think decentralized systems for the next conversation would be really interesting and neat to talk about, like how to implement and where it's important and where it's not. Yeah, besides that, this has been a wonderful conversation. Kevin and Jamie and Daniela, you guys are superstars, and it's been a pleasure. And I'm just so incredibly glad that my children didn't bust down the door. Knock on wood, we probably have a few seconds left, but yeah, we made it, and thanks. It's been amazing.
Yeah, can just echo that. Sorry.
I'll give ourselves a couple more minutes, because we received a question that I believe, if any of us can enlighten, would be great for the listeners. And it's, what will be the impact of decentralization on student achievement? Any of you that would like to just give a light on it, more than welcome.
I think that kind of going a little bit to what Kevin was saying as well, that the interesting part when we're looking at decentralized and centralized outcomes is they're not necessarily any different. The process is different, but the actual outcome can be exactly the same. You might achieve something under a decentralized structure that you could do and replicate within a centralized structure. It just depends where the value is and who do you want to benefit at what point and how we want to verify things. So the achievement itself shouldn't be disrupted because of whether it was decentralized or centralized. Like, the value shouldn't necessarily be different, but it's a case of understanding the process of what that achievement means and that person being able to verify it or take it with them. But it shouldn't necessarily take away from that achievement, because you go, they did it the decentralized way. If they'd done it the centralized way, we would have given them X, Y, and Z. The achievement should stay the same.
Thank you for those couple extra minutes. Kevin, go ahead. I just wanted to be sure that we had that for him.
Sure. Hope that answers the question. Yeah, just echo everything. Thank you as well for having me. And it was really a super exciting discussion, and always happy to repeat that if you want so.
Of course.
Yeah, likewise.
Thank you.
Sorry, go for it then, yeah.
Go ahead. Didn't see you coming, sorry.
It's not a problem. It's because my screen's a little bit. I've got the webcam in front of where other people are, so I can't see the reactions at the right time. So everyone's sitting in front of me. So I apologize for interrupting. Yeah, it's a great conversation, and I always think it's really interesting to engage people in such a meaningful way, because these discussions are incredibly important, because they are going to structure, whether it's the case of how the metaverse operates or how it's regulated or how Web3 is going to impact our society. Like, we can look at how these technologies have impacted our finance sector, the NFTs are beginning to impact our legal sector. You know, how does that then affect our government structures and stuff like that? Like, we need to be talking about this more, because it needs a variety of people involved with it, with lots of different experiences and understanding. And I suppose I want to echo something that is, you don't need to just have a technical background to participate within these conversations. What you have is what you need to bring to the table.
Totally agree. Everyone can add value to this as long as we're all looking for a brighter future together. So thank you for saying that. Thank you, everyone, for giving us this hour together. Hope that if you see this now or in the future, you find it insightful and inspiring as well for anything that you like to dream of or learn in Web3 and around education. So thank you very much. We really, really appreciate it, and have a great, great evening or day from wherever you are coming from.